everybody! Welcome, my little pretties. It's your mistress, the Queen of Lions here, and today, welcome back to another episode of Shadows and Pretties. Now, about I think a week ago, after I did my episode on the Fox and the Hound, I decided to make a poll and ask you guys, what guys would you like to see in, in the next episode? So I asked, everyone, would you like to see Cinderella or Hunchback of Notre Dame? So it looks to me that Cinderella won, so I am going to be talking about the Cinderella story. I am going to recap of the Disney one, the original one. There is a remake to it, so I'm going to just say right now, the remake of the plot is just basically the same as this movie. So I'm going to go right ahead and we'll recap the first movie. But I'm just going to say right now, Cinderella Dreams Come True and Twist in Time is like, and the third movie is basically a two direct-to-video sequels, but they're not as good, so I'm just gonna focus on the first original movie. So this is based on the how do I put this? It is based on basically the, well, I'm just gonna say right here right now that it's based on the Cinderella story, the one with by Brothers Grimm, which I am going to say right now that, of course, Disney decided to adapt this movie back in 1950. And, however, during the mid to late 1940s, Cinderella was already being slowly developed along with Pinocchio, Fantasia, and Bambi, etc. So, I might talk about Bambi in another episode, but today we're just going to talk about Cinderella. So, of course, I'm just going to say right now that this is based on the story of Fairy Tale Name by Charles Perrault, not by the Brothers Grimm. Pardon me that I made a mistake right there. So, before I get started, I'm going to recap the original Disney movie that we do know, so then you guys will have a better understanding on, basically what the story is about. So, most of us who have seen this movie as a kid, probably on VHS tapes and stuff like that, let's get on with it. Cinderella is having a dissatisfying life, having to have lost both her parents at a young age. So, of course, she has been forced to work as a maid in her own house with her stepmother, Lady Tremaine, but I'm just going to say stepmother because I think that's easier, and who is cruel to her and is jealous of Cinderella's charm and beauty, addition to her two stepsisters, Drizella and Anastasia. Yeah, people, Anastasia's name has been used a few times in the Disney, non-Disney universe, but what happened is they cruelly take advantage of her, and despite this, Cinderella is kind of gentle woman. She is friends with mice and kind to the birds that live in her house. So that's basically pretty much like Snow White and Sleeping Beauty. Like almost every Disney princess movie we talk about is always friends with animals, which I find that really interesting. And really kind too. Meanwhile, at the royal palace, the king is just frustrated that the prince is not married, and of course he and the Grand Duke organize a ball in effort to find a suitable wife for the bored and picky prince, requesting a very eligible maiden is to attend. Upon the ball, of course, the stepmother agrees to let Cinderella go if she finishes her chores and if she could find a suitable dress to wear. Cinderella then finds a gown that belonged to her mother, decides to refashion it for the ball, but of course her stepfamily appeased by this by giving her extra chores, and Cinderella's animal friends, including Jacques and Gus, refashion it for her and completing her with the design with the necklace, sash, and discarded. Of course, Drizella and Anastasia basically, respectively, when Cinderella comes downstairs wearing the dress, the stepsisters are upset when they realize that Cinderella is wearing their accessories, and they of course tear the dress apart to shreds and leaving for the ball with their mother. Cinderella rushes out the gardens in tears, where there was a fairy godmother who appears and insists that Cinderella goes to the ball. But however, the fairy godmother magically transforms the pumpkin into a carriage, mice into horses, Cinderella's horse Major into a coachman, the dog Bruno into a footman, before Cinderella's ruined dress became a shimmering ball gown with her shoes into glass slippers. So as Cinderella leaves for the ball, the fairy godmother warns her that the spell will break at the stroke of midnight. So the prince rejects every girl until he sees Cinderella, and then he dances with her. Unaware of who he is, the two fall in love and they go out for a stroll together in the castle gardens. As they are about to kiss, Cinderella hears the clock chime midnight and she flees, leaving the castle with only one of her slippers to fall off. The palace guards decide to give the chance that Cinderella flees the coach before the spell is the last stroke of midnight. Cinderella and her pets and the mice hid in the woods area, and the guards pass. Of course, remain the Cinderella has her piece in the costume, but of course, one glass slipper is missing. Of course, later on the next day, the Grand Duke informs the king that Cinderella, who remains unknown, has escaped, and of course, the prince wishes to marry her. So the lost glass slipper is the only piece of evidence. So the king issues a royal proclamation of ordering the maiden into the kingdom to try on the slipper to find the right girl. He reaches Cinderella's household. Of course, we do see the stepmother, who apparently overhears Cinderella humming the waltz played at the ball, realizing that Cinderella is the mysterious girl. So of course the stepmother locks her in the attic in the bedroom later as the Duke arrives, and of course Jock and Gus steal the key and they get Cinderella free. So Anastasia and Drizel try on the slipper, but however it didn't fit them. So of course we see as the Duke is about to leave, Cinderella appears and asks to try on the slipper, knowing it will fit. So of course Duke ends up, of course, the stepmother and makes the Duke trips over her foot, and of course the glass slipper shatters on the floor. Much to her horror and the Grand Duke's relief, Cinderella presents Duke with another slipper, which it fits perfectly. So the movie then ends with Prince and Cinderella at their wedding day, and they share a kiss as they leave. What a really good story I have to say about this Disney movie. I really do enjoy that this Disney movie actually did pretty good. So I could definitely say Disney did a very good job when it comes to this movie. It's just as good as Snow White, and it is good like Sleeping Beauty. So I could definitely say this one was actually a really well done and really well made movie. So I could definitely say this movie was actually really good and really well done. Now I will be talking about the remake of it a little bit. So the remake, I'm just going to say, is that the plot is basically the same as the original. I've not seen the remake, but I do know the remake plotline is basically the same as the original movie. So that's something I could definitely say. I'm not going to say what's different or something because I've not seen it, but I could definitely say it's actually pretty good in my opinion. So, of course, we're going to talk about the original fairy tale, which is by Charles Perrault. So, let's begin with this story. Now, this story is a little bit different compared to the original Cinderella movie, but we're just going to say right now is that it's also known as the Little Glass Slipper. It's a folktale embodying an unjust element of oppression. So, of course, there are many other versions of it. So, I'm going to talk about the most recent version of it. So, of course, this version of the story, the European one, was published in 1634. So, it's actually pretty cool. And of course, they have the Brothers Grimm version that released in that year as well. So there's many versions that we do know that are, basically this. But however, I'm just going to say the most common version that a lot of people really have thought. So basically the story is pretty much the same. Of course, that's just probably just me being crazy. So the plot is basically the same, but I am going to talk about the Brothers Grimm one, which is the very famous one. So basically what happens is that a plague infests in the village, and of course a wealthy gentleman's wife lies on the deathbed, and she calls for her only daughter to tell her to remain good and kind, and God will protect her. She, of course, dies, and the child visits her mother's grave every day to grieve, and a year goes by. The gentleman marries the stepmother with 2 daughters from a previous marriage, and they have beautiful faces and fair skin, but their hearts are cruel and wicked. Yeah, much like the original story. The stepsisters will steal the girl's fine clothes and jewels and force her to wear rags. They, of course, banish her into the kitchen and give her the nickname Ashful or Cinderella, and she is forced to do all kinds of work from dawn to dusk. For the girls, the sisters did nothing but mock her and make her do chores, just like the stepmother has done this as well. Of course, one day the gentleman visits a fair, promising his stepdaughters the gift of luxury, and the eldest asks for beautiful dresses, while the younger daughter wants some pearls and diamonds. Of course, what happens is the gentleman goes on his way, but of course, while he passes through the forest, he gets a hazel twig and gives it to the daughter, and she plants it on her mother's grave, and she waters it with her tears over the years. It grows into a glowing hazel tree, and of course, the girl prays for it under the tree a few times a day, and the birds always comes to her as she prays. She tells her to the bird every time the bird is flown down that they have wished for. Of course, the dad eventually dies later on, and of course, the king decides to proclaim a festival that will last for 3 days, invites all the maidens in the country to attend, so the prince can select one of them for his bride. Yeah, very different compared to Disney. I'm surprised none of this made it to the Disney movie. So the two sisters are invited, but of course, her Cinderella wants to go to there as well, but of course, the stepmother says to her that she can't go. So basically, Cinderella proclaims and protests so many times, and that's basically what's going on with it. So the stepmother is very different. So I'm not going all of the what happens in the Brothers Grimm one, but I'm just gonna say right now that the one I do know that is the most familiar one and is also the most freakiest one is that when the stepmother's daughters were tested on to try the slippers, what happens is that one of the slippers from one of the sisters, so who tried the slipper on, her big toe was too big, so the stepmother gives her a knife and she cuts off the big toe so she could fit in the slipper. But however, the prince and the duke realizes that this is a trick, so he ends up trying to fit it on the other stepsister. The other stepsister's big heel is too big for the shoe and won't fit it. So basically, what happens is that the stepmother gives the other sister the knife and says to cut off her heel. So she does that, and the prince realizes it's a trick because they both saw blood on them, and they realize the stepmother's tricking them. So basically, Cinderella does get married in this version, but of course, there's multiple other versions of this story, so I'm just telling, the most famous ones that I've seen. So basically, what happens is Cinderella becomes the wife of the prince, and of course, this is something a little graphic. The evil stepsisters, get their eyes pecked out by birds. So, yeah, very disturbing, and I'm glad that none of that made it to the Disney movie, because if they did, I could tell Disney would have got, I guess just a lot of backlash from it. And I do know that this is actually the actual thing when it comes to, the stepmother and everybody else. Now, in this one, however, the stepmother and the stepsisters are just as mean as the Disney movie, but they didn't go as far as, having the stepmother tell her stepdaughters to cut off, parts of their body, which I'm really glad that didn't make it to Disney movie because everyone would be freaked out. And of course, Disney would get sued or at least complained by many parents and about their children watching that scene if they were to see it. So that's basically what would have happened if they kept using the following fairy tales. Now, the Brothers Grimm one, I have to say, is the most famous one, but yet again, that's probably just me because, I like the Brothers Grimm stories. I'm sure some of you guys like it too, so I'm just saying right now. Now, the original story of Cinderella is really freaky, but it's none other different than the Disney movie. But however, they did have to make a few changes to it, so that makes it more suitable. So, we basically get, that the stepmother and the stepsisters are wicked and cruel and jealous that Cinderella's nice and kind. And they're like, well, if she's nice and kind and has beautiful charm and beauty, how come we can't be like that too? That's basically what the stepmother is basically saying. So, alright. Now, I guess I could definitely say that the original story of Cinderella was actually pretty dark, but it's actually good. Same thing could be said for the the Brothers Grimm one, although it's a little messed up. So I'm just gonna say right now, it's a good story, but it's messed up at the same time. But I'm sure most of you guys probably have heard of the Brothers Grimm version of the story, and probably other versions of it as well. Now, the live action movie of Cinderella is different compared to the original movie. Well, obviously it's live action. Um, Another thing I could definitely say was that some of the stuff that has been used in it is a little, how do I put this? A little bit all over the place. So it's actually quite interesting. But I've not seen the Cinderella movie, so I don't really know the remake, but I like the original Disney one because that's the one I grew up with, was, the Disney one, like the original Disney one that came out in the 50s. But I actually have to say that the story itself was actually pretty good. Although it's a little disturbing, but it's actually pretty interesting when you look at it. So, just to say right now, if you have not seen the Disney version of Cinderella, I highly recommend you check it out because it's a really good story, and I can definitely say you will not be disappointed when you see this movie. Like, the Disney movie, I have to say, if you guys want to take a look at it, feel free to, because you guys are going to be really surprised at this story. Now, I definitely say that the story itself was just absolutely amazing. Like, the original story, I could say was messed up. Same thing with the Disney movie, but the Disney one didn't do not as dark as the Brothers Grimm one. Like, it didn't involve, the stepsisters cutting off parts of their body. It didn't involve any of that. It involved, a lot of other dark themes. And I could definitely say that Disney has done a lot of weird things at times, and they even have done some dark stuff as well. So I could definitely say to Disney that they have done lots of weird stuff in the past, and they still do it to this day when it comes to making their movies. Now, sure, I could definitely say that this Brothers Grimm one and the other versions that they were doing before Disney adapted it was a little disturbing, but I'm really glad Disney adapted this into a movie because I was waiting for them to adapt something more interesting in a Disney movie. But I'm very glad that they adapted this movie because what would have been good for Disney if they didn't adapt it? That's just my question, but it's always pretty cool in my opinion. Now, I'm just going to wrap up this episode because I talked about, Cinderella and about, it's pretty different. I could safely say the dark story was really messed up, but I think I like the Disney one a lot better, even though it was messed up, but it didn't involve the two stepsisters cutting off their limbs or anything like their toes or anything like that. It doesn't involve any of that, but it is still pretty good that Disney didn't add that. I'm just glad Disney did not decide to sit there and add that because, yeah, Disney would have got a lot of backlash if they sat there and did that. But other than that, the story was good. And I could definitely say, if you guys like this episode of Shadows and Pretties, be sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. And I am going to be seeing you all in the next video. I hope you all enjoyed. So, like always, I'll be seeing you all in the next video. Peace out.